So let us dance this night away.
Hello and welcome to a new video. I hope everybody is doing well. So today's video is my February recap, so all the books that I read in February. These were the books that were on my TBR, which I also did a video of. And out of all of these, I only managed to read 4 in February, which is fine because, you know, it's not competition. But out of the 4, out of all of those 4 that I did read, I did enjoy. So yeah, let's get into what I read. So the first book I read was Heart of the Sun Warrior by Su Lin Tan. This is the sequel in the Celestial Kingdom series. The first one is Daughter of the Moon Goddess, which I can actually show you. So Daughter of the Moon Goddess was the first one, and then this is the sequel, and this was my first 5-star read of 2023. I absolutely love this series. I mean, these are the Fairy Loot editions, and these editions are just stunning, and oh, I love this series so much. It just kept me gripped, and there was so much more going on in this one than there was in the first one, even though the first one had a lot going on as well. But yeah, I absolutely love this one, and the ending was, I got a bit scared towards the end, but it was perfect. I loved it so much. So Daughter of the Moon Goddess is a Chinese mythology retelling. It's about it's about the moon goddess Chang'e, I think you pronounce it that way, who is banished to the moon realm, and she has the task of basically lighting the moon, or making sure the moon illuminates every night. And she's been banished there because basically she drank the elixir, or the immortal elixir that was meant for her husband, and so her punishment was to basically be exiled, and her husband obviously never got to drink the elixir and stayed as immortal. So it's kind of like a tragic-ish love story. She has a secret daughter called Xingying, who basically wants to, in Daughter of the Moon Goddess, she wants to free her mother from exile, and in doing so she needs to figure out how she's going to do that. So I won't go too much into the plot because we're here to talk about Heart of the Sun Warrior. But long story short, she goes through lots of trials and tribulations to get what she needs to, you know, basically end her mother's exile. Heart of the Sun Warrior obviously follows on from Daughter of the Moon Goddess, and it basically, it's hard to, I don't want to talk too much about it because it will spoil Daughter of the Moon Goddess if you haven't read it. So maybe what I'll do is what I normally always do, which is just read the blurb. So there might be a few spoilers in here, so yeah, sorry about that. Book 2 in the best-selling Celestial Kingdom duology. An unspeakable terror sweeping across the realm as the Celestial Emperor tightens his grip on power. The fragile peace Xingying fought so hard for when freeing her mother is under threat. Forced to flee her home, Xingying ventures into unexplored lands of the immortal realm to seek aid. However, with alliances shifting quicker than the tides, she has to overcome past grudges and enmities to forge a new path forward, seeking aid where she never imagined. Xingying must uncover the truth of her heart and claw her way through devastation, to rise against evil before it destroys everything she holds dear and the world she has grown to love, even if doing so demands the greatest price of all. Oh, let me just look at the artwork. This was just... so much happened. There's quite a few tragedies in here as well, and I loved it so much. I love the writing, it's beautiful writing, and just the world as well. This is where I would want to visit, just to see all the decadence, opulence of all the palaces and the costumes and everything. Yeah, I love this. This was 5 stars for me. I'll also read you my Goodreads review on here as well, just to give you an idea of what I thought at the time. My first 5-star read of the year. Oh my gosh, finishing this book had tears in my eyes and a smile on my face. As with Daughter of the Moon Goddess, Heart of the Sun Warrior is so beautifully written. I want to again leap into the pages and see all the glittering wonders Su Lin Tan describes. No, so much happens in this sequel that you don't know what more can possibly happen, especially to Xingying. We get to see more of the other kingdoms and the return of some favourite characters. I'm not if it's me, but it felt... okay, I don't know what I meant to say there, but it felt like there was more action in this book at times, and my heart was beating so fast at times as well, at what was happening, which I guess is all signs of a good, well-written book. I'm sorry if the camera is shaking. My cat is going in and out of what I have the camera on. Go away. The love triangle does have a final outcome, but man, is it a journey for everyone. I think where am I? Right, I think I'd have to say that the love story in this book is on par with one of my fave pairings from ACOTAR. Bless you. Hashtag epic love. I highly recommend this series, and if you haven't read this one yet, what are you waiting for? One last thing, did anyone else get love between fairy and devil vibes when reading? Yes, I did, because I watched that and finished that series not so long ago. It's a Chinese drama. I did get vibes of that when reading this book. So yeah, has anyone watched that series? Also, if you haven't, it's so good. Right, you are being a massive nuisance. Ugh, come here. She hates being picked up. Ow, 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 ow. This is my Jessie who does not like being picked up. And she is a nuisance. Aren't you? Are you a nuisance? Go away. Now I have cat hair all over me. So the next book I read was These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. I forgot to mention at the beginning of this video actually, my February TBR was Chinese New Year themed, because between January and February is Chinese New Year, and I thought, do you know what, I've got all these books that need reading, so let's do a theme, and that was the theme. So my next one was These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. It is inspired, it's not a retelling, I don't think, it's more of an inspired Romeo and Juliet tale. And this one for me, it was hard to get into at times because it's very politically heavy. It's 1926 Shanghai, so a lot was happening during that time in real life, which wasn't great. And so yeah, it was very politically heavy in this book, and at times I felt kind of awkward, and yeah, just because, you know, to be a foreigner, it just made me feel quite awkward and such. I'm not going to go too much into it because I don't like getting too political about books and things like that. For me, it's more about enjoying it, not debating certain things. So yeah, I almost DNF'd this because I just wanted her to not put everything so fully heavy into the politics for this, because apart from that, it actually was a really good story, in terms of, you've got two rival gangs, or gangsters, yeah, there's two rival gangs, and then you've got the heirs to both of these gangs that kind of come together to investigate why there is all these not murders happening, but they're kind of like deaths, and it's basically like supernatural deaths, and they're banding together to find out why this is happening, because it's happening to everyone. It's happening to their gang members, the other gang members, and just general civilians and such. They're like, what is happening? And that part was really good. And you know, because I do like the mystery and intrigue in books and things like that. And then I picked up on some of the subtle notes for Romeo and Juliet. I mean, one of the main characters is called Juliet, the other is called Roma or Roman. And I must say, reading at the ending for this book, it did make me want to read the second one, because there was a part of me that was like, I like this, I'm not sure if I'm going to reread it, so I don't know if I want to buy the second book. So I was going to go to the library and borrow it, basically just so I could finish it and know the outcome. But I'll read you the blurb on the back of the book. The year is 1926 and Shanghai hums to the tune of debauchery. A blood feud between two gangs runs the streets red, leaving the city in chaos. Juliet Kai is the proud heir of the Scarlet Gang, a network of criminals far above the law. Roman Montague is the prodigal son of her greatest rivals, the White Flowers, who have fought the Scarlets for generations. He's also Juliet's first love and first betrayal. When a deadly madness strikes gangsters on both sides, the people start to whisper of a contagion and a monster in the shadows, and as the deaths stack up, Juliet and Roma must set their guns and grudges aside and work together. So I gave this a 3 out of 5 just because of how much politics there was in it and how it kind of made me feel in a way. And also I thought to myself, this is a young adult book, and it's you know, a young adult fantasy book, and it's just so heavy on the politics that it's kind of like, you know, it's a bit much for a young adult book, I think. You know, I'm all for history and teaching, you know, the next generation about what happened in the past, how far we've come, etc. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, it felt kind of at times like there was a lot of grudge a lot of grudge in this, again, which I understand, but yeah, so that's why it got 3 out of 5 from me. Let's see what I wrote on my review. It was tough knowing what to rate this book, as towards the end it got good. However, I stick by 3 stars. This book was a tough one to get through. I hoped by chapter 3 it would get more interesting, but it just dragged on. It took quite a few more chapters after to really get going. One thing I wasn't massively keen on was the amount of historical politics. For a YA fantasy, it was extremely heavy. I understand why the author went into such great detail, albeit it made me feel quite awkward as a white person, but for this genre it was just too much. The monster at times felt like a figment of the imagination, a tool to use as a villain to make sense of the madness occurring. I did enjoy the odd homage to Romeo and Juliet, certain parts depicting certain scenes. It has made me wary as to whether I want to read any more of her books, as if it's going to be heavy politics over the story, then it's just not for me. That being said, I do want to read the second one, but will be borrowing from the library as I'm not sure I want to purchase the sequel. So yeah, that was my review on Goodreads. But yeah, it was tough to get into and like I said, I was planning on getting the sequel from the library, but David actually bought me the second one, so I did manage to get to read this straight after These Violent Delights. So we have Our Violent Ends. And this one I actually gave 4 stars because I enjoyed reading this one more than the first. It still had your, you know, politics in there, historical events, but it wasn't as in your face, ran down your throat, which was more bearable. It didn't feel quite as angry. So yeah, I did enjoy that part more. And then just sort of kind of wrapping up, getting to the bottom of things after what happened at the end of book 2. Yeah, I did enjoy this a lot more. So I'll read you that. Juliet has been a girl on the warpath. One wrong move and her cousin will usurp her place as the Scarlet Gang's heir. The only way to protect Roma and herself is to let the boy she loves believe she murdered his best friend in cold blood. Roma is still reeling from Marshall's death and his cousin Benedict will barely speak to him. Roma blames himself for letting the ruthless Juliet back into his life and he's determined to set things right, even if that means killing the girl he hates and loves with equal measure. Then a new monstrous danger emerges in the city. Shanghai is at boiling point. The nationalists are marching in. Whispers of civil war are brewing and gangsters' rule faces complete annihilation. Roma and Juliet must put aside their differences to combat monsters and politics, but they aren't prepared for the biggest threat of all, protecting their hearts from each other. So yeah, it was a much more easier read. And again, a lot more goes on in this, and there's a lot that gets wrapped up at the end, and I must admit, reading it throughout I was like, is this going to be tragic, because obviously it's Romeo and Juliet. Won't give away the ending for you, but you're kind of on the right track. Let's see my Goodreads review, shall we? I enjoyed this book much more than the first. TVD was too politically heavy for me at times and made me feel a little uncomfortable. I understand why Chloe Gong went so much into the history and events of Shanghai in the 1920s, but for a YA book it was a bit much. That being said, I liked these violent ends. I felt like these violent ends picked up a lot quicker and there was a lot going on. It kept you wanting to read on and know more. I think I liked the multiple POVs. It was good to get to know some of the other characters more. Yes, I do remember I did enjoy reading the multiple POVs, because in the first one it's just Roma and Juliet's POV. The Romeo and Juliet references were more frequent in this one and it's making me want to watch the DiCaprio and Danes movie. I'd love to see this as a movie. It would definitely translate well onto the big screen. That ending though, ... So Our Violent Delights I gave 4 stars. Sorry, not Our Violent Delights, Our Violent Ends. The next book I read after those was Jade Fire Gold by June C.L. Tan. This book, I really enjoyed this book. It, again, I do love Chinese mythology, retelling fantasy books. They're just so immersive, especially with like when they're really well written as well. This one is about An and Altan. So we have our main female character, who is An. She is an orphan that's been brought up by her grandmother, and it's the typical, you know, poor girl rising above everything kind of thing for her destiny. And she sort of crosses paths with Altan at the beginning, who is he is the lost prince as such, an heir to the empire. His family were basically assassinated and he is the only survivor. And he is on a quest of revenge. Basically, he wants to kill the person that killed his family and take back his throne. And so their paths cross. They kind of align together to basically go after this sword, which is, I think it's the Sword of Light or something like that, or the White Jade Sword, because there are 2 swords. There's the Black Jade Sword and the White Jade Sword. I'll put the right names up for you. So they go on this quest to go and get that, because anyone who holds that has the power to basically make things right in the world. Because long ago, this is a really bad recap for me, I'm so sorry. Altan's great grandfather was emperor and he had this sword, and basically the way he conquered the land was with this sword and his army, but in doing so it unleashed a lot of dark magic, which basically blighted the land and kind of created the desert, so not much life grew, plants, etc. And so they're all struggling in now with it, and so Altan wants to kind of right the wrongs of his ancestors and bring back the lushness of life as such. It was, I think it's a standalone because it was published a few years ago, and I went to look to see if there was another book, because there could be another book based on the epilogue. And yeah, she hasn't written anything for a while. I know she's working on a book, but I don't know what it's about. I haven't really deep dived that much. But yeah, it definitely could do with another book, so I hope that's what she is writing. But as far as I'm aware now, it's just a kind of standalone. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. Again, with the writing, it was quite beautiful, and the you know, the description of the different lands, and you know, because she gets to go to the Empress Palace and stuff as well there, because it's one of those which has so many gates and inner like palaces and such. So in my mind it was just like this long corridor of different entrances to different palaces. But I'll read you the blurb. It's very short. In an empire on the brink of war, Arn is no one with no past and no family. Altan is a lost heir, his future stolen away as a child. When they meet, Altan sees in Arn a path to reclaiming the throne. Arn sees a way to finally unlock her past and understand her lethal magical abilities, but they may have to pay a far deadlier price than either could have imagined. So yeah, I really like the magic in this as well. It was all like elemental, so we had earth, air, fire, etc. Arn's ability is a bit more lethal than all of those, and it's one of those again where she's kind of squashed it down, and when she has to use it, it's either too much, she doesn't really know how to control it. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book and I gave it 4 stars. I couldn't quite give it 5 stars, I don't know why. My grading is ratings is very high standards. I have to completely love and adore a book to give it 5 stars, so but let's have a look at my Goodreads review. I really enjoyed this book but couldn't quite give it a 5 star, and I can't say why. I enjoyed everything about this book. A down and out girl who suddenly becomes strong and powerful, raised up from poverty, and finds love and friendship and family. The magic and legends is something I also enjoyed, especially in Asian tales. The characters are really likeable. Arn and Altan's dynamic is fun and teasing, and you just know they're going to be endgame from the start. I also love Tang Wei and know she would be the best friend we all want. The distrust between our 2 MCs was played out quite well, and I think it worked having it as 2 POVs, as it's jumping from one head to another to see how each scene plays out, albeit differently sometimes. A good read, and I'm disappointed it's a standalone, as June has set it up rather nicely for a sequel, unless we get another standalone but in the same universe. Highly recommend. So those were all the books I read in February. What did you guys think? Have you read any of these? What are your thoughts on them? I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.